After she fills her stomach in the trash can, she came to take the final exam. Her stench was not only disliked by her classmates, even the teacher was ready to take away her paper. Seeing the girl's insistence, the teacher agreed. The girl who never attended class actually got first place in the exam, but the teacher was so excited that he called her back. Lizzie lived in a huge slum. She was born into misfortune. Her father had no job. Her mother suffered from severe schizophrenia. Their income was government child support, but every time, her mother cheated her out of it. Lizzie lived on leftovers from the trash. When she walked into the classroom, Lizzie was greeted with nothing but abuse and ridicule, because she smelled so bad, and her hair was covered in lice. It wasn't that she wasn't hygienic, it was because her family couldn't afford the water bill. The malice of her classmates made Liz skip school all day long. Only when it was time for final exams. She came to school only then, but she always scored 100 on every test. The teacher told Lizzie to come to school, otherwise, her parents would be reported. Lizzie agreed, but just as she was getting her hopes up, her mother became ill. She wanted to take her sister and Lizzie to live with her grandfather, but Lizzie didn't want to abandon her father. Her mother left with her sister. Lizzie took on the burden of caring for her father. Cookies and water were her daily bread. That day, she had just prepared her lunch. Someone from the welfare organization came to her door. The teacher had reported her for truancy. Lizzie kept putting in a good word for her father, but then her father ran off to pack Lizzie's bags. That's when Lizzie realized she had no home at all. The situation at the shelter wasn't much better. Lizzie's first day here, she was doused with a bowl of hot soup. She screamed in pain. The girls laughed and laughed. Lizzie survived the hardest 7 years of her life, until she was 15 years old. She escaped, but she didn't have a home anymore. Her father had been institutionalized. Lizzie had to go to her grandfather. Her mother held Lizzie in her arms. It was as if she was her mother again. The good times didn't last long. Mother had a drinking problem again. This night, she was drunk again. Grandpa vented his frustration. He threw Lizzie out of the house. But luckily, this time, she had a friend. This girl Alice. She had the same experience as Lizzie. They wandered and begged together. Despite their wanderings, Lizzie would still visit her mother. In her mind, as long as her mother was alive, she'd always be a home away from home. Eventually, the last straw was broken. Alcoholism took its toll on her mother's health. Lizzie didn't even get to see her mother one last time, and that's when she realized, if she continued to fall, bound to repeat the tragic fate of my mother, the only way to save herself. That night, Lizzie knocked on her neighbor's door. She wanted to continue her studies. The neighbor helped Lizzie apply for a place at a private school. The principal agreed to admit Lizzie, but only with the consent of her guardian. Lizzie had to go to the shelter and find her father, and ask for his help. The father didn't refuse. After all the formalities were completed, the father looked at his grown daughter. He felt so strange. Liz was the first to speak. "I love you, Daddy." I didn't expect my daughter to have no resentment at all. The only way the father showed his love was the hug he gave Lizzie, and the way he told her to study hard. Besides, she had to earn her own living. Even the time she spent scrubbing dishes, Lizzie didn't waste. Every day ends on the subway, and starts on the subway. The girl had lost her home a long time ago. That morning, the principal said the top 10 students in the school would get a free trip to Boston. Lizzie was the top student in the school. The first thing Lizzie did when she got to Boston, just to visit Harvard University. Looking at the soaring buildings, and all the students who were so well spoken, Lizzie wanted to be one of them. But the high cost of tuition at Harvard was Lizzie's biggest obstacle. Luckily, New York was willing to offer students, with a generous scholarship, $12,000 a year. For 4 years, Lizzie eventually got into Harvard, but she didn't let up. She continued her education for a better life.